I wanted to say this for a long time, and I need to get it off my chest. Needless to say, second language acquisition learners' English language proficiency inevitably comes up short, in contrast to native speaking English teachers' language fluency. Learners often become completely captivated by their native speaking teachers' impeccable English. Both educators and learners are intensely obsessed with the target language alone, while ignoring the intricate process of second language acquisition. Instead of carefully examining the causes of distinct difficulties by giving equal attention to learners' native languages. English educators are making the learning process more confusing with their vague approaches and theories. With all due respect, I find it difficult to maintain an interest in native speaking scholars and educators' discussions, which are often mired by abstract theories. It is even more disappointing to hear non native speaking educators ostentatiously recite their abstract theories while the reality is learners lack the most basic English phonetic rules. Over the last 20 years, among scholars, educators, and learners I have met both in Asian countries and in the US, almost all of them were not able to clearly distinguish exactly how many English vowel sounds exist, nor were they able to define the meaning of syllable and its significance. It is in vain to attempt to discuss how to communicate spontaneously, genuinely, and meaningfully out of consideration for a vast amount of learners around the world without understanding the most basic English phonetic rules in the first place. Unaware of the non-existent or inexplicable concepts within a learner's native language in relating to the basic English rules, second language acquisition scholars continue to support a very ambiguous and completely unrealistic learning approach. Many non-native speaking educators who actually have knowledge both in English and their native language too often misquote the following statement. The single greatest challenge in the profession is to move significantly beyond the teaching of rules, patterns, definitions, and other knowledge about language to the point that we are teaching our students to communicate spontaneously, genuinely, and meaningfully. Out of offering comfort, many scholars and educators also say that it's best to embrace subpart of competence, mastery of specific competence, and biliteracies with many dimensions. They suggest that learners must employ shrewd communication strategies such as interpersonal negotiation and topic avoidance and modified interaction. Native speaking educators don't hesitate to impose limits on learners by advising them to temper expectations instead of having unrealistic expectations to be native like. If the ability to properly pronounce one syllable English words is the crux of English language proficiency, do you still consider it as the unrealistic expectations that learners must let go of? Are you confident whether your Asian learners know exactly what the entire English vowel and consonant sounds are? It appears that native speaking scholars had already made up their minds about learners' potential to become fluent. They had moved on long before to focus on reducing their accountability by dismissing or being unaware of the causes of obscurity that their learners encounter. Invoking the complex learner variables and obscurity. Most English educators claim that they are concerned with learners' goals, education levels, stages, ages, proficiency levels, and the choices for language learning styles, strategies, and the order of teaching. Despite their legitimate concerns, The truth is, many learners lack creativity, essential to achieve the functional use of English language at the most basic level. In fact, learners around the world are fundamentally deprived of the crucial foundation that develops a creative construction process. Learners in great numbers are still unaware of the most essential concepts in and of themselves. It's completely irrational to think that anyone can learn a second language naturally, or, in their words, spontaneously, genuinely, and meaningfully, by ignoring the basic rules of the target language. In order to successfully overcome the inhibiting effects of their native language, learners must identify the non existent concepts within their native language in relation to the target language. Without making it easy to connect the crucial concepts between the two languages, educators haven't been able to provide the effective solution for the unidentifiable sounds, grammar, and word arrangements in English to learners around the world in the first place. Both native and non-native speaking educators have been outrightly rejecting the opportunity for learners around the world to attain a deep conceptual understanding of the process of learning the English language. The rarity of proficient English language skills is often closely connected with a sense of privilege based on auspicious socioeconomic standings in Asian countries. Proficient English language skills outweigh any other job qualification and guarantee the most desirable employment opportunities as well as career advancement. It has also successfully secured non-native English-speaking educators prestigious academic positions despite their lack of knowledge of basic English rules and superficial level of English communicative skills. They have long benefited from the deeply fixed belief that even the most basic English communicative skills are hard to obtain. Unfortunately, the consequences of long-standing misconceptions and their secrecy are unfolding at the expense of learners' incessant frustration and agony that finally come back and haunt the non-native speaking educators. Unaware of the non-existent concepts within their native language, Asian learners are still held back too long from attaining basic communicative skills of the English language. Asian learners suffer from the extensive and debilitating effects of unresolved sources of obscurity. Asian learners' lack of basic English communicative skills reflects educators' failure to cope with the intricate nature of the second language learning process and the lack of adequate instruction aligned with learners' unique difficulties. It's worth noting, though, that language scholars like Stockwell, Bowen, and Martin constructed a hierarchy of difficulty, a well-known model that a teacher or linguist could predict the relative difficulty of a given aspect of the target language through a very careful, systematic analysis of the properties of the two languages in 1965. These scholars formulated the 8 possible degrees of difficulty for the phonological system and the 16 levels of difficulty for grammatical structures of two languages. It's hard to imagine, though, why other scholars or educators in the following generation have not identified a learner's native language as one of the most recognizable learner variables that clarifies the obscurities between the two languages. It's also hard to understand why this cross-linguistic approach was not developed into more diversified, pragmatic frameworks that can be applied to learners around the world, directly addressing learners' unique difficulties. It is doubtful whether language education scholars and experts have been wittingly or unwittingly convinced people that learning a language naturally is the best way. Native-speaking scholars urge English educators to display warmth, compassion, empathy, kindness, and patience They are good qualities, but they are not sufficient to achieve English language proficiency for Asian learners. Whether it's an absolute negligence or an intentional elitist cultural hegemony from native speaking educators, the primary aim for second language education is to resolve the obscurities and achieve learners' creativity.